Hey everyone, so today I thought it would be fun to go over how smart Charlie Munger is. He might come across as a straight shooter and brash in interviews and in annual meetings at Berkshire Hathaway, but don't let this think that he isn't a deep thinker. He is a complete genius. So I'm going to cover some of my favorite lessons from Charlie that I have gathered from my favorite sources. You'll be able to see for yourself how smart he is and a little insight into how he sees the world. Now, I'm doing this because I think we should learn from the best. If we can even take one thing away from Charlie and apply it to our lives, we will be better for it. So let's improve ourselves. In the time of his and Warren Buffett's reign as the leaders of Berkshire, the company has returned roughly 2 million% on its initial value. This was accomplished simply by investing the capital of the company in an increasing number of prosperous enterprises and without borrowing any money. It is a story for the ages. And to those who do not know him, Charlie is a fiercely independent intellectual who, in the words of his partner Buffett, marches to the beat of his own music, and it's music like virtually no one else is listening to. Now, did you know he trained as a meteorologist during World War II and as a lawyer at Harvard before devoting himself to business? Now, Munger has deeply studied psychology, economics, physics, biology, history, among many other disciplines, in developing his system of multiple mental models to cut through the difficult problems in complex social systems. It's a system like no other. Now, I know he is super old and a lot of people think he is stuck in his old ways. These people that say this are generally crypto people because Charlie thinks Bitcoin is rat poison and a Ponzi scheme. That's his words. Now, I think it's a bit naive for us to think that one of the most widely read, experienced billionaires hasn't thought and researched Bitcoin before making these comments. Look, I would love to get Charlie and my friend Justin, who I interviewed about a month ago as he is a crypto expert, I'd love to get them in a room together and listen to their arguments for and against Bitcoin. Anyway, let's move on to some worldly wisdom from the great Charlie Munger. The Art of Stock Picking is a 20-page or so document that Charlie wrote that is an incredible read. There is a lot in it, but my favorite part is when Charlie is talking about Walmart. It's quite interesting to think about Walmart starting from a single store in Bentonville, Arkansas, against Sears and its name and reputation and all of its billions of dollars. So how did Sam Walton from Bentonville, Arkansas, with no money, blow past Sears? Well, Walton, being as shrewd as he is, basically broke other small town merchants in the early days. With his more efficient system, he might not have been able to take some of the titans head on at the time. But with his better system, he could destroy those small town merchants. And he went around doing it time after time again. Then, as he got bigger, he started destroying those big boys. Now, this quote is my favorite part that truly shows the intellect and rational brain of Charlie Munger. Charlie said this referring to the Walmart strategy. Is this a nice way to behave? Well, capitalism is a pretty brutal place, but I personally think that the world is better for having Walmart. I mean, you can idealize small town life, but I've spent a fair amount of time in small towns, and let me tell you, you shouldn't get too idealistic about all those businesses he destroyed. Now, I just love how rational this is. He isn't soft or emotional about how people should feel. He gets the ruthlessness of business, and that's what business is. It's ruthless. There's no puppies and rainbows here from Charlie. Now, moving on to the topic of competency, Charlie said this. Warren and I don't feel like we have any great advantage in the high-tech sector. In fact, we feel like we're at a big disadvantage in trying to understand the nature of technical developments in software, computer chips, or what have you. So we tend to avoid that stuff, based on our personal inadequacies. And I think this is a really interesting point. I personally had to study pharmaceutical companies in depth, and if I am really honest with myself, I still don't understand the intricacies of the business models. So even though I have researched the industry a lot and studied many companies in the space, I have to accept that I haven't got the expertise required to understand these businesses. I think if I was a scientist working in a pharmaceutical lab and then also a manager of the business, I would have a far better understanding for investing in a company like this. So the point is, there are some things you just won't understand. Pharmaceuticals for me is one of those fields. A lot of technology is also too hard for me, and crypto is definitely outside my understanding. But if you can dive into a field, maybe it is crypto, maybe insurance, maybe it's a particular geography like Indonesia or Poland, whatever it is, you can get a huge advantage over 99% of investors by understanding an area better than the rest. Something you might be hearing a lot about at the moment, for example, is that there is just no good deals out there. Everything is overpriced. Well, I guess I disagree. It just means you aren't looking hard enough. Monish Pabrai just recently said that there are plenty of interesting opportunities in South Korea, Japan, and Turkey. I'll add Indonesia and China to that list. I'll also add that there are some very interesting micro-cap companies in the USA and Canada that are not overpriced at all. The big obvious stuff that everybody is following might be overpriced, like Amazon, Google, Tesla, Texas real estate, Bitcoin, but that's because this stuff is easy to follow and easy to understand and research. Okay, I went on a bit of a tangent there. Let's get back to the worldly wisdom of Charlie Munger. Now, before I get into this next topic, for those of you who want a safe brokerage account for buying shares in different countries, I have a link to Interactive Brokers in my description, where you will get free Interactive Brokers stock for signing up and using the platform. Now, this is far better than Robinhood or anything else like that, because Interactive Brokers have decades of experience, a strong balance sheet, and an extremely solid, trusted business. They also serve people in most countries throughout the world. So if you're in Germany, Japan, Spain, even the Ukraine, you can get an account. Now, I personally have an account with them and Saxo Bank. The fees are better, in my opinion, for Interactive Brokers though. Okay, so the 24 standard causes of human misjudgment. This is a lecture given by Charlie Munger back in 1995 and is one of the best lectures I have ever heard. It is about life and psychology, and it is just brilliant. Do yourself a favor and watch it over and over again. Now, don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I'll be covering more famous investors in the future. Some of them you will know, but many of them you will have never heard of before. So don't miss the chance to learn about potentially your new favorite investor. Okay, so this is the first point Charlie raised in that lecture. Incentives are what control the world. If you give me two phones to sell, the first phone is a Chinese knockoff iPhone and the other is a Google Pixel. Let's just assume the Google phone is far superior. But I get a bigger commission for selling the Chinese phone. Well, if I am poor and need to feed my family with my sales commission, then I'll try to sell the Chinese phone rather than the superior phone, regardless of what you prefer. My incentives are aligned with the Chinese phone. In an investment, one of my checklist items is how invested is the CEO in the business. If most of the CEO's net worth is in the stock, then he or she has the same incentives as us as the shareholder. Dropbox, Markel, Constellation Software, Berkshire Hathaway, OTCM, and Shinnikin CEOs are all heavily invested in common shares, the same as the investors. Therefore, the decision of the CEO will be in line with the shareholders because the CEO is a major shareholder. Seems logical, right? But a lot of CEOs are not incentivized like this, and it can mean poor long-term performance in the stock price. So the next point I'm going to raise here is a way to stop being manipulated by incentive-caused bias. Now, I'm sure someone has tried to sell something to you before. For example, real estate agents are the case study here. A real estate agent will show off how nice an apartment is, explain all the positives and why it's a great deal, but their incentives are to make the sale and take the commission. They don't really care if you are happy or not with the outcome. So a good trick here that I've learned from Guy Spear, who I actually think learnt it from Charlie, under no circumstances should you be allowed to buy something that someone is selling to you. Guy Spear said that he had a financial broker explain to him one day how good his company's services are and how much money he could save by switching to this broker. But Guy said, look, you might be right, but I have a rule that I can never buy anything that anyone is selling to me. The salesman was shocked, but Guy pointed out that he simply never buys anything that someone is selling to him because he isn't sure of the incentives. And it is a brilliant model that can be applied to life. Sure, you might miss out on a good deal here or there, but you will never be manipulated and you will always be driving the decision. You won't be affected by what's called incentive-caused bias. Oh, this is a great one, and something I have to be very careful about here on YouTube. This is the idea that because I make a stand on a particular topic, like a company that I think is a good investment, I have to make sure that I can always re-examine my statement objectively and honestly see if I am wrong. For example, I made an investment in Bank of America and Prudential Financial back in 2020. Both, in my opinion, were underpriced and solid companies. But I've actually recently sold these companies after re-examining my portfolio. Was I wrong to invest? Well, kind of yes and kind of no. At the time, I was confident they were good businesses at cheap prices. But my investing philosophy has evolved and I am now looking for bigger returns. I wasn't confident I would get these big returns in these two investments. I think I can put the money to better use. So because I'd announced this to the world that these are good investments, I'm kind of committed to my statements. But that is a bias that I have to make sure I'm not restricted by. Commitment bias is a strong force in the world, and it's a bit like a sunk cost. If you have invested a lot of time and energy into something like a small business, it's harder and harder to make a difficult decision and shut it down if it isn't performing. If it is making you no money, well, it is logical to close it down. But you feel like you should just keep going because you have told all your family, sunk all your money, and you've committed to the idea. This is commitment bias, and we need to try our best to not be influenced by this flaw in our psychology. So I've just covered the first 3 misconceptions presented from Charlie in his lecture. The rest are for you to research yourself. They are something we should all listen to and study closely. I actually need to be constantly reminded of all these human misjudgments, as I definitely notice I am affected by them. And I think we all can be at some times. And as Charlie would say, spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Slug it out 1 inch at a time, day by day. At the end of the day, if you live long enough, most people will get what they deserve. I really enjoyed studying Charlie Munger, and I hope you enjoyed this video as a reminder to study him as well. Now let me know if you enjoyed this video by giving it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my future videos. Happy researching, and I'll see you in the next video.